Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and welcome to Hunt Showdown. I'm really excited to be bringing you guys this video because, believe it or not, this is the first video I've ever done that isn't solely focused on the Division. Generally, I like to stick to what I know, and I certainly know the Division inside and out. It's part of what I enjoy making content for, but today I wanted to spread my wings a bit and talk about a game that my friends and I have been playing quite a bit recently because it's pretty damn fun. And its core gameplay loop is going to pretty heavily remind you of one from the Division, that being the Dark Zone. Before I go any further, in case you're new, hi, I'm RogueGold, and as I stated, I generally stick to covering the Division, but hey, I thoroughly enjoyed making this video, and so if you guys give it a lot of support, I'm definitely down to continue coverage on it and eventually talk about some other games as well. So if that sounds like a community you want to be a part of, then consider subscribing and joining the club. We'd love to have you. So before I get into exactly what this game is, let's give a quick background here. I first became aware of Hunt more than a year ago when it was still in development. My friend and I noted that it had a similar premise to the Dark Zone, and so it stayed on our radar. Eventually, the devs released a 1-hour demo for the game on Xbox, which is where we play, and so we hopped into it. It was rough. The ideas were cool and it definitely had a pretty unique identity, but it was still really rough. It felt clunky, the performance was not there, and we really had no idea what the hell we were doing. So our hour of gameplay passed and we just kind of forgot about it. Fast forward to about a week ago, and SkillUp, who as I'm sure many of you Division fans know, releases a review and guide for the game. Now I've got to say, even if you were a hardcore SkillUp hater back in the day, when you would trash on the DZ, and believe me, I was one of those people, I suggest you can go and give him another try. Ever since he transitioned off of the Division and switched to making broad game reviews, I have to say I really enjoy his content. He's thorough, insightful, and objective. That can be pretty hard to find these days on the internet. So anyway, he makes these 2 videos about Hunt and says he's been playing it a lot lately, and so I was like, maybe I should give it another shot. Division is kind of in a lull right now as we wait for TU10 in the new raid, so why not? And I must say that while that demo had some pretty bad performance, now the game is fully released and it runs much, much better. On my Xbox One X, it's really smooth. There's better handling of the guns than there was on the demo, lots of improvements, and after about 15 to 20 hours of playing it, I come to you with this video, which is an important note because chances are very high that I will get some information wrong in this video. Hunt is a very intricate and, well, hard game. Even though my friends and I have been playing it for a decent bit, there's undoubtedly mechanics we don't yet understand and some secrets we've yet to uncover. So while I certainly understand the core mechanics of the game and am pretty proficient at this point in killing both PvE enemies and other players, I'll most likely get some things wrong. If that's the case and you're a Hunt player yourself, feel free to correct me in the comments below. It'd be much appreciated. Additionally, I'll leave a link to both SkillUp's review and his in-depth guide on the game in the description below, as he does a very good job covering both. This video won't necessarily be a guide per se, I just wanted to give you guys an overview on the game and an idea of where to start if you're new. Alright, now that you have that background, I'm sure my Division audience is dying to know, how does this game embody the Dark Zone? Well, it's certainly not in terms of gameplay, because this is a first-person game set in the 1800s, meaning all of your weaponry will come from that time period. However, where the similarity comes in is in Hunt's primary game mode, Bounty Hunt. We're going to go on a full walkthrough of a game that I played a bit later on in the video, but let me summarize what the game is all about. Before you launch a match, you must first set up your loadout. First, you select your hunter. Now, in premise, there's not much difference between hunters except that each can come with a different setup of health segments. That may not seem too important now, but we'll get back to that later. After you do this, it's time to fill out your arsenal. This includes 2 main weapons and both a selection of tools and consumables. These can vary from melee weapons to heals and a wide array of throwable bombs and utilities, things like that. Lastly, you have the perks tied to your hunter. These aren't too important to new players since you won't be able to equip that many, but in general, picking ones that seem obviously helpful probably are. Reduced damage, shorter healing times, quicker stamina regeneration, all good options. It is probably good to note that the game is centered around you losing the items and hunter you go in with if you die during the match. However, this only becomes active after you hit rank 11, which takes maybe 5 to 8 good games to hit. So you get a bit of a grace period to learn the game and the mechanics before you have to worry about losing your stuff. So now that we've covered all of that, it's time to get into a game. Each game can have up to 12 players, and either as a solo player, a duo, or a trio, your team is launched into a PvPvE arena. Your objectives are as follows. You want to use both your map and your unique dark side ability, which is right bumper on Xbox, to seek out clues. Every match there's either 1 or 2 bosses, and the whole goal of the match is to kill them and extract with their loot. But in order to find them, you're going to need to scan 3 clues tied to that boss. You want to make sure that on your map, you don't cross into the other boss's area halfway through uncovering one boss. Now, these clues will be indicated by blue specks when you're further away, which turns into a more solid blue cloud as you get closer. And if a clue is ever red upon your arrival to it, and you hear angry whispers while in the dark side mode, that means other players are nearby. Like I said, these are 12-player lobbies, and everyone has the same goal to kill these bosses and extract with their bounties. There's certainly enough total clues that every team could theoretically perfectly avoid one another, but overlaps and run-ins are bound to happen. So once you've scanned 3 clues, the building that the boss is held up in will appear on your map. It's important to note that each clue you obtain grays out certain portions of the map, indicating that the boss isn't in that area. So even with 1 or 2 clues as you're going along, you can get an idea of what direction to head in for your next one. So you arrive at the building that the boss is hiding in. Again, even though it's on your map, your dark side mode will indicate which specific building he's in. And also again, if it's right upon arrival, other players are nearby. There's 3 bosses you can fight: the spider, the butcher, and the assassin. It'll be indicated which one you're tracking down by their symbol in the top left where your clue progress bars are. And once you enter the building to begin the fight, their health bars are indicated by red lines circling around the diamond-shaped symbol. If it's not clear, their health is draining clockwise down towards the point of their death. Here's the biggest tip I can give for fighting bosses. Try to find axes or sledgehammers that are scattered about the area to use. Not only do they do a lot of damage, but they're melee weapons, so you create very little noise. This is probably a good point to note that this game is heavily reliant on sound. If you're not playing with headphones or a headset, you're probably not going to succeed. It even tells you this when you're booting up the game. The game uses some pretty advanced audio technology to really guide the gameplay via sound. This is really important when it comes to engaging and fighting with other players. Everything from twigs in the forest, to glass on the ground, to chains hanging from the ceiling, creaky doors, everything can and will alert people that you're nearby if you're not careful. As with a lot of games, sprinting makes more noise than walking, which makes more noise than crouching, so it's all about knowing when you're safe and when you should be more careful. It's also crucial that you listen for these audio cues to know if someone is sneaking up on you. A big factor on this is the non-demonic animals around the map. There's a variety of them: injured horses on the ground, dogs and chickens within cages, and flocks of crows and ducks. Anytime you get close to one of these, they'll start making noise, and the players are the only things that can trigger these noises, so if you hear them off in the distance, you'll know you've got company. So now that we understand that, let's get back to meleeing. It's the safest and possibly the most effective route to melee most enemies in your way. The regular knife you can purchase will one-shot a lot of the normal enemies, or take 2 to 3 hits on some of the larger ones. There are some of those larger and unique enemy types that take special tactics to defeat, but I'll just point those out once they come up in the upcoming gameplay walkthrough that we'll do soon. Generally just avoid the especially tough looking guys. Now for both your knives and sledgehammers that are good for bosses, you have 2 attacks. Just pressing the attack button, which is right trigger on Xbox, will do a quicker but less damaging attack. Holding down the same button charges up a stronger attack that you can hold and charge for as long as you like until you're ready to strike. Walking up to an enemy and releasing the button will unleash the attack. The charged melee is what I'd recommend for most situations. The only thing that you will have to keep note of for any melee is that you have a melee stamina bar, the yellow one down near the bottom of your screen. Now once you start to drain this, it will recharge unless you go and sprint, in which case it will halt any recharging. Alright, so the last thing to mention for bosses is that it can be very valuable to set up traps before you begin the fight. And these aren't for the bosses, but for the players. When you're fighting the boss, your attention is going to be pretty consumed, and you'll be much less able to listen for subtle noises. So setting traps near doors and windows can prove very helpful. Now there are traps that you unlock later in the game which you can bring into a match with you. However, as a new player, you probably won't have those. What you can do is find bear traps which will be scattered around the map, similar to the sledgehammers and axes. As is the case with any of these items you can find and pick up, you can't store them in your inventory. You simply hold them in your hands until you swap to something else on your wheel, and then it drops those items at your feet. There are usually bear traps inside or nearby the boss building, so you won't have to walk too far with it in your hands. Okay, so you've set your traps and killed the boss with sledgehammers or axes, and I should say that with both bosses and any enemy in the game, of course you can use your guns. You're just putting yourself at a much bigger risk since sounds carry so far. I try to reserve my guns for when I get into fights with players, or if I'm just in a bad situation and I need to shoot my way out from several enemies converging on me at once. So you've killed your boss, and now if you go to his body, you'll see a prompt to begin banishing. Now what this does is extract the bounty token that you want to obtain from within him so you can go extract it for yourself. However, this takes a long time, and as soon as you hit that banish button, it alerts everyone on the map and tells them where you are. All I can advise here is to set those traps, have your guns at the ready, and keep watch through windows and corners. You'll make the least noise when you crouch, so people will have a harder time knowing where you are in the building, and you can listen the best to hear where someone may be approaching from. There's a chance no one will show up, but the whole point of the mode is to extract these bounty tokens, so chances are there's going to be some competition. You can track the banishing progress in the top left where that same boss icon is, and as soon as it's complete, you can go back to the boss's corpse and retrieve the bounty token. Now, one nice thing is that upon picking up the token, you gain a buff to your dark dark side ability, noted in the bottom left with the big orange diamond with a number in it. What this does is when you're using the dark side ability, any enemy players nearby will be clearly highlighted in a bright orange, so you know exactly where they're at. The only thing to be careful of is that that number on the buff represents the number of seconds you have left to use it, so you only get 5 seconds in total. What I usually do is as soon as I grab the token, I do a very quick 360 spin in the dark side ability to see if anyone's nearby. This will only use a second or less of the buff, and so if you don't see any orange, you'll know you're safe for now and you have the buff to utilize as you go to extract. Then of course if you do see orange, you can continue to use the buff to pinpoint the location and prepare for a fight. Alright, so you have the bounty token and you're ready to extract. You can find extraction points by going onto your map and looking for the 3 little arrow marks along the perimeter of the map. Honestly, I find this to be the easiest part of the match. You're just hiking it to the extraction and you're pretty much done. There might be 1 to 2 regular enemies waiting there that you can kill quickly, and once you're within the extraction point's range, you just have to wait a quick 30-second timer and you're out. It doesn't alert anyone that you're extracting, nothing like that. Now I have heard people complaining about being killed by extraction campers before, but that's honestly never happened to me. Every single extraction I've done has gone off without a hitch. The only exception was that one time the spider was in a building right next to an extraction point, and so after we banished it, some teams show up and we fought them until we were able to extract. But I've never personally seen anyone extraction camp. That being said, it's totally possible, so watch out for that. And there you go guys, those are the basics for a round of bounty hunt. Like I said, there's tons more intricate details that you learn over time, but this will get you in the door and have a good basis of knowledge so that you can play and compete. Before I wrap the video up, I'm going to go ahead and share the highlights from a pretty sweet game that we played. I've likely used clips from it already to demonstrate my talking points, but this will give you a much more immersive look at the game. I'm not going to show the entire thing, I'll just cut around to the important parts and give my comments as they're needed. Let's go. Alright, so you can see I start in the dark side mode to see what direction our first clue is, and pretty quickly I check my map to make sure that we won't cross into any other boss's area. As you can see, I use my knife on this first enemy, and these regular zombie type guys die from a 1 charged up hit. It's also a pretty nice feature that your teammates are outlined in blue, so if you get a nighttime map, it's much easier to keep track of them. So as you can see, our first clue is in this cage, and in there is definitely one of the most annoying enemies in the game, the Immolator. You do not want to melee him with a knife or shoot him. Basically anything that pierces his skin will cause him to explode and fire, and it does immense damage. Instead, pull out your gun and melee him with the stock by holding the right stick on Xbox, and this will do a blunt melee attack, which takes longer but causes him to not explode and kill you. And so now that we have our first clue, I check where the next one is at in the dark side, and I also bring up my map to see what portion has been grayed out by our first clue. So as you can see here, I trigger both dogs and a flock of crows when I exit this compound and kill this enemy, and so if there were other people nearby or even a bit further away, they heard it all. Now it's not like you're never going to trigger these things, it's just something to be aware of. Here we have another pretty annoying enemy type who my friends and I have just codenamed the Bug Lady. Basically, she'll just send swarms of bugs onto you that inflict a poison. Now your instinct might be to back up from her and get some range, but it's actually most effective to charge her and hit her with your knife. She'll die in 1 hit, and the poison from 1 round of bugs won't be enough to lose you a health segment. Here's another really annoying enemy, the leech guy. I don't know any of their names. Basically, he can't see you, so he's only really attracted to noise, but he charges you super quick if he gets onto you, and he does an insane amount of damage. On top of that, he has a batch of leeches that just follow him around, and he's incredibly tanky. Overall, I'd say the best method of this guy is just to avoid him if you see him, and if you have to take him out, a stick of dynamite is pretty effective. Here's another enemy type. This one is mostly just a tanky or regular zombie. They don't have any special mechanics. 3 charged up melee attacks will kill it. There is one variant of this guy who has barbed wire wrapped around him that'll bleed you. If you find one, just avoid him, or if you have to fight him, just shoot him so he doesn't get close to you. Here's another one of those alarm animals I was talking about, and if you melee the horse once with a knife, it'll die and no longer give away your position to any potential nearby players. Now if I go to check my map and see what got grayed out from our second clue, that's when we get the notification for another team banishing the spider. Now at this point we were pretty close to finding the butcher, so we decided not to go, but you get the idea that everyone knows where you are once you begin banishing. So we had some troubles with enemies here, but you can see that we found our third clue, and I go into my map to check where the butcher is at. The building he's in is denoted by the red target. At this point, since he's right by us, I go to pick up this sledgehammer my teammate had called out from inside of this shack. So here you'll see I go to heal before we enter the boss building. Basically how health works in this game is that if you're still within a current health segment and you take damage, it'll regenerate back up. But if you fall below a health segment, you now have to heal in order to regain said segment. This can be done in a variety of ways. So we start the boss battle here with our sledgehammers, and like I described earlier, you can charge it up and hold it above your head, and when he's within range, you let it go and it hits him pretty heavily. Now is probably a good time to note that anytime you get bled or burned and you get the prompt to stop it, you will not stop burning or bleeding until you complete said prompt. It'll drain you all of your health segments and until death if you don't do it. So as we kill him here, you see me step back to heal up because I got pretty low in the fight. However, there's a really handy mechanic to be aware of that as soon as you begin banishing a boss, all of your health is instantly regenerated. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. I had forgotten that was the case in this game, so luckily it happened before I wasted my heal. At this point, we're just waiting for our banishment to go by, but we've heard that there's some players outside. We're going around and setting up traps and resupplying, just getting ready for whatever. It's also pretty important to figure out where all of your entry points are. This door was off in the back and could be opened pretty quietly, so we stationed me back there to watch it, whereas you didn't need to watch the main entrances as heavily because they were sliding doors that would make a lot of noise if they were open. So now my teammate had spotted the players, and so I rushed to this window so I could shoot down and help him out. Other players don't have nameplates or anything like that, so you have to be pretty aware and make sure you don't scan an area and miss someone because you thought they were a zombie. You'll see I hit this guy once, and that's denoted by the white hit mark. Since I saw where they fell back to, I ran outside to try and hit them with a firebomb, which if I didn't make clear by now, throwables like dynamite and such are very effective and deal a lot of damage, often one-shotting. I didn't end up hitting anyone here, but they're good to remember you have. So now our banishment had finished, but we knew there were still a lot of players nearby, so I go to collect the bounty so I can use the dark side buff to see where they are. We had like 3 or 4 people around, so I knew we couldn't yet run for an extraction. And so here I get my first kill. This guy rushed in and I ended him pretty swiftly with my shotgun. Shotguns are definitely my favorite pick over rifles for a reason like this. Now it's important to note that you get no indicator when you kill someone. The only way to know is if you hear that cry that one made after I shot him, and if they collapse onto their back it means that they're dead. They had the bounty token from the spider, but in most cases you wouldn't get any symbol on their body or anything like that. My teammate does get killed here by someone watching their dead teammate's body, and so that prolongs the fight a bit with us trying to figure out how to outplay them. Eventually we decided safe enough, so I go out to revive our guy. Basically, you can get revived infinitely. The only thing that prevents that is that you permanently lose 1 health segment each time you die and get back up. That means it can't be healed back up. There are some cases where it does restore, like if you banish a boss, I believe, but generally they're gone for the rest of the duration of that match, so watch out for that. And so we finally tracked down the last player and were able to take him out. When you kill someone, there's 2 things you can do. One, you can either loot their body to obtain either money or one of their equipped consumables, and then you can trade out your weapons for one of theirs on the ground. But if you do switch, that means you will lose the weapon you swapped to when you extract. You'll get that new one the enemy had, but you'll have to rebuy the one you were using, assuming you want another one. And then from here on out, we just head to a nearby extraction point and get out with all of our loot. I just wanted to show you guys some of the clips from that game so you could see some better examples of the mechanics, because we did pretty well. Ended up getting the bounties for both bosses and killed quite a few players along the way. So that's going to do it for our look at Hunt Showdown, guys. I know it's quite different from the Division and what I usually post about, but I think it's a fun little game with some Dark Zone style gameplay that probably not a lot of you know about. So maybe this can help you guys find a fun new game to play. I hope you all enjoyed my venture outside of the Division world. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. I have no idea if this will attract any fresh eyes to the channel or not, but if it did, I'm glad you're here and I hope you consider joining. Turn on those notifications so you guys never miss when I upload, and head on down to the comments and let me know what you guys think about Hunt. Do you like how it looks or think you might try it out? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold out.